Hey there, my name is Persnickety, and today I am joined by an indie developer and friend of mine named the Fox Knox. Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Um, my name is Alex. I am going on to the ripe young age of 37, and I make indie games, of course. I'm a solo dev that lives in the US, and I guess that's it. I'm just a guy who makes games. Yeah, nothing too complicated.
Okay. And what made you decide to dive into game development in the first place?
Um, I've always kind of wanted to make games, which I suppose is the answer you'll get from a lot of people. It's just something to where like I play games and I always naively think to myself, well, this could be better, that could be better. If I made a game, I wouldn't have made that mistake. That sort of bold stuff going on. And I decided that I would finally give it a shot. I have been trying for years to get into making games and never really found success. It turns out it's very hard to make games. I had no idea. Much like a lot of people, I naively just assumed, well, how hard can it be? You just put some code together and just make sure it's fun. That's what you do. I don't understand how people mess this up. Well, it's deeper than that. It's very easy to armchair do. And so learning how to code and learning how to make a game is very difficult. Nonetheless, though, I did persevere, go me, but it wasn't until the release of Vampire Survivors. And I came across Vampire Survivors because I saw Northern Lion playing it on Twitch, and when he was playing it, actually wasn't very popular yet. I had like less than 1,000 reviews, and I gave the game a shot, and my immediate thought was, I know I can do this better. People have to understand, of course, at the time, Vampire Survivors was it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough when it first came out, and so that was not that crazy of a sentiment to have. And so that's what finally got me started into making games, because making a game like Vampire Survivors, not to ramble too much here, um, it didn't seem all that difficult. Very simple gameplay loop. Character moves around, you automatically attack enemies, that sort of thing. And it was through that I was finally able to break through after years of trying and failing to create a game and actually like publish it and see it through.
If you don't mind me asking, what exactly was the number one thing that you felt like you could improve on over Vampire Survivors when it launched?
Well, when Vampire Survivors launched, it really was just you running around, attacking enemies. I think it was something like every 5 minutes, a little like sort of like mini boss came in, but the mini boss was basically just like a really tanky enemy. There was nothing special about it, and that's how it was at the time when it came out. Um, and I figured it would be more interesting if they actually did something. Maybe these little bosses had like skills or stuff they did, to just mix up the gameplay. So it's not like, because it felt like even though these really tanky like boss characters came in, the gameplay never changed. It was exactly the same from start to finish. And I thought there was a lot more potential. And so that was one of the key things I put into my first game, which was Nomad Survival. And I made it so you do encounter little bosses throughout, kind of like Vampire Survivors, but they actually throw stuff at you. There's actually stuff you have to look out for. And I added like events and stuff that happened throughout the game, which was a novel concept at the time. So like, maybe like 7 minutes in, the environment changes, it gets dark, and now you have to navigate through the darkness for a few minutes, stuff like that. And for a brief period of time, it genuinely felt like I pulled it off. I made Vampire Survivors, but better, which is a controversial sentiment, but at the time, a lot of people would agree. It was early enough to where if you looked it up, you could see a lot of forum posts on like Reset Era and other places like that, where people would ask, "Guys, should I get Vampire Survivors or Nomad Survival?" And the sentiment was often in my favor. A lot of people cited that Nomad Survival just had more interesting stuff in it. Of course, if you fast forward to today, absolutely no longer the case. But for a brief period of time, I was successful.
I'm sure you were riding that high for a little while too.
Oh yeah. Well, it was great because by the time Nomad Survival came out, Vampire Survivors was just now starting to kick off. So I happened to be at a pretty favorable time. In fact, some people were confused and thought Nomad Survival came first. And I had to explain to them it didn't. No, I was not first. But I came in so early that people weren't sure like what happened, like who actually came onto the scene first. But it was very much Vampire Survivors. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been something of an explosion in that genre ever since Vampire Survivors really popped off. So you got in at the right time, I think, early on.
That's an understatement. Yeah. Oh god. For better or for worse, there's been a lot of games that have come out since. And ironically, I guess, for maybe lack of better words here, some people will review Nomad Survival today and say that, oh, it's just another one of the many knockoffs. It's like, no, you don't understand. I was here early, right? I didn't know Vampire Survivors was going to explode. I just thought it would be an easy game to make and get started when it came to making games. It just so happened that Vampire Survivors exploded, and by extension, my game did well. But I really wasn't counting on it. I just got lucky.
And that, you say you thought it would be an easy game to make. Was it easy to make?
I'd say so, because when I was working on Nomad Survival, it took me about 4 months to go from concept to early access on this game, and that was with me learning how to code. Coming from no background of any sort on that, I've never made games before. I've never coded anything. I've certainly tried to learn, but never succeeded. And so I had to follow all sorts of little tutorials like YouTube and stuff, and just try to bumble my way through the engine. And when you consider that, I feel like 4 months is an insane turnaround time.
Yeah, that is quite good. I'll definitely admit that. You mentioned learning the engine. I know that initially you didn't use it, but now you use Godot. How would you say it has been transitioning from where you started to that these days, and will you continue to use Godot going forward?
People are going to kill you for calling it Godot, but I also call it Godot. What they're going to say instead, it's Godot. Duh. No, it's Godot. Do you know why? Their mascot is a robot. Dude, it's the Godot robot. It's not the Godot robot. Stop it. Stop it. No, it's Godot. I'm calling it Godot. So anyway, what was the question again?
How has the transition been from, I do believe you used uh, game engine?
I used Game Maker Studio 2, a sequel. Yeah. Game Maker Studio 2 was touted as being very user-friendly. So of course, why not start there? It was user-friendly engine, right? At the time, I'd never heard of Godot. It existed at the time, but I'd never heard of it. And so I got my start in the Game Maker Studio 2. Honestly, very clunky engine. I try my best to recommend people away from starting with Game Maker Studio 2, because the biggest problem with Game Maker Studio 2, at least at the time when I was using it, is that there's no easy way to test your GUI. And games have a lot of GUI stuff going on. You want the placement of, your level to be in the right spot. If like a level up screen pops up and you have all these upgrades, you want that to show up correctly. In Game Maker Studio 2, I had to continuously test the game, close the game, test the game, close the game. It was really annoying. And that was actually one of the big reasons why I moved away from Game Maker Studio 2. Nomad Survival was, in fact, the only game I made in that. Moving forward, I used the Godot engine. And the Godot engine, in comparison, when you're in the engine, the UI that you're modifying is a very what you see, what you get this sort of interface. Like, I visually see what it's going to look like in the game without having to test the game. And that is so much better. It's crazy. I'm almost annoyed I ever messed with Game Maker Studio 2. So that was the big reason that got me on board. Everyone was citing it was better. And then Game Maker Studio 2 was also transitioning to like a subscription model. So you had to pay like $10 a month to actually export your game, which is annoying. And then I heard that, there's Godot, which is free and it's open source. Well, why not? It seems like a shoe-in.
And I'm assuming since you're still using it, then it was a great win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It still has its flaws. Every engine does. And, that's why some devs still make their own engine. But it's fantastic for what it is. Absolutely. Yeah. I continue to use it, and I can see myself sticking with it for the foreseeable future.
All right, so you've mentioned Nomad Survival a few times in this interview so far, but you published 4 games. So sales aside, do you have a favorite?
I do. Um, Another genre that I really thought would be easy to get into was idle games. And I'm not wrong, but I'll get to that later. So I really wanted to make a game called Nomad Idle, as it turns out. That was the first game I was going to make. And I played with it a little bit, I did a little bit of prototyping, but it just didn't stick. As usual, I'd get started on learning how to code, and I'd be like, no, I'm too stupid for this, basically. And then I would stop. And so, of course, to Vampire Survivors, I ended up pivoting into Nomad Survival instead, etc., etc. My favorite game to have been made is Nomad Idle, because that's what I was going to make originally. And so to finally properly create it, put it for sale, and see that a lot of people are enjoying it is very fulfilling. It's like tying up loose ends, like unfinished business sort of thing. And so it feels like in a weird way, I'm free. And it's kind of how it feels, is that because all the stuff I've wanted to do, I have now done. And so now I am moving forward and just working on stuff that I've never thought of until now. So it's great. It's almost like if I stopped making games now, it would be kind of poetic in a way, because I would have ended where I wanted to start.
That's admirable, I suppose. Come back full circle, finish what you wanted to start, but obviously you're not finishing, and we'll get to that in due time. But what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned in your time as a dev?
It's different that people don't care nearly as much as you think they do. My games have a lot of little things that piss me off, quite frankly. They annoy me. And they're things I would have taken care of. Of course, I recognize them as little annoyances, but like I couldn't think of a good way to address whatever it is. And I would get tripped up on the smallest stuff. I'd spend hours, I'd be thinking that for days. I'd have like a notepad open with paragraphs of my thoughts, how to go about rectifying whatever this thing is. And then ultimately I would say, I'm just going to have to run with it. Like, there's no good solution to this. Just go ahead and push it, and hopefully people don't get mad. And no one ever brings it up. No one cares. Whatever this little thing is that I get tripped up on so hard, no one gives a shit. No one cares. All they care about is the game fun, which makes a lot of sense. Like, duh, right? But when you're actually making the game, it's easy to lose sight of that. Where no, everything has to be perfect. You don't understand, and it has to be super polished, and there needs to be little hidden, tiny details that people will appreciate. That stuff. No, is the game fun? That's the only question that matters. And so that is, by and large, the biggest lesson I've learned as a dev. Where on the outside looking in, again, no, try to make a fun game, but it's easy to get lost in the weeds when you're actually making the game.
Yeah, it's a lot like whenever you're making an art piece, you get too zoomed in on the details and you nitpick things that most people probably won't even notice.
That's right.
And then, if there's one thing about being a game dev that you think most people don't understand, yourself included when you used to be an armchair dev even, what is it?
There's a certain type of feedback that I get sometimes, and I'm pretty sure I've given this feedback once or twice in my life as well. It's this very naive assumption of, hey man, you should implement this feature. You can accomplish it by doing it like this, in fact. I think this feature would fit in perfectly right over here. If you implement it like this, it shouldn't be very hard to implement. It shouldn't be very hard to implement. It's easy. Come on, you can do it. You're just being lazy if you don't do it. No, dude. The problem is that there is simple things in your mind. Like one big thing on Nomad Survival was it was English only when I released it. And people were like, adding localization, I'll translate for you. And it's like, that's not the problem. That not having the translations actually isn't the problem. My game isn't compatible with translations. It's hard coded with English. And so people would say, but it's such an easy change. I don't understand. Games do it all the time. Well, sure. It really depends on how that game is set up, right? And this applies to everything. There's a lot of stuff where it seems like it would be a simple change, but you have no idea how the game is coded. You have no idea how the systems work with each other or anything like that. Now, of course, eventually I did get Nomad Survival able to have translations, but it took me a week to do it, of working on it like all day, every day. And people would assume that this is like a 2-hour change. No, not when you code it like an idiot. So who knows, right? So that's the biggest thing, is that you have no idea how a game is put together. The littlest features that you see could be improved upon, could be like unfathomably difficult to change, just because the way it all links together, everything else going on in the game. Because games are very complicated, as it turns out. You know, a lot of systems calling upon other systems, calling upon other systems. If you change one of those systems even a little bit, you might be causing problems with the other systems that are calling upon it. And so you have a domino effect. It's difficult.
So what you're saying is, at least back with Nomad Survival, you were a spaghetti coder.
The spaghetti never really leaves you, you know? Like, occasionally just the pasta type changes. It could be like, maybe this time making fettuccine alfredo or something.
Okay, Alex, your studio name, the Fox Knox. That's an interesting name. What prompted you to choose that?
I needed a studio name. So I have an affinity for foxes. Who knows why? I just do. And so it was like, well, I can't just name my game studio Fox. And I don't want to name it something like Fox Games or like Fox Codes or something like that. I got to think of something that would work. And so it's like, we're going to do like a color, Red Fox Studios or something. Nah. And the problem is that it turns out a lot of people like foxes. So there's a lot of game studios out there with the word fox in it. And so I needed something that would be fairly unique to me. And so I was thinking, well, what if I rhymed it with something? And so it was like, well, what about like Fox in Socks? No, I don't really like that. What about Fox Vox? I looked this up, and it turns out it's actually like an audio application. So okay, maybe you don't name my studio that. Fox Fox? I don't know why, but I just landed on the Fox Knox. I thought that it was a name that was kind of fun to say, and you wouldn't really forget it either, because it is a very unusual name for a studio. Now, usually your studio names are like, Whiplash LLC or something like that. But this is the Fox Knox. It sounds like I'm making children's books, right? So it's a little bit strange, but I landed on it for whatever reason, and it works.
On what does the Fox knock?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I really just came up with it. I was like, yeah, that works. Let's just go with it.
And my last question regarding your name is, why not Fox Machina?
Or like Fox Populi or something like that. There's a lot of plays on it I could have done. And that was actually something I considered. Because what about something like Rock Slide? Use Fox Slide. No, that's dumb. Like, there's a lot of things that, like, you get caught up on it and you realize that, you know what? No one gives you what your studio name is, dude. Like, I thought about it long and hard, and then I in my mind, I did the equivalent of spinning a wheel, and the wheel landed on the Fox Knox. I was like, okay, that's cool. Because, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, people care about your games, not your... Something that's not, like, an offensive vulgar, it's kind of whatever.
Well, you've made a name for yourself now anyway, so people know the Fox Knox, can't go changing it.
That's true. Yeah.
All right. Do you have any advice for other aspiring indie devs out there?
Some people will make games as like a hobby, which is fine. But I'm not going to be talking to these people. What I'm going to say is to people that are trying to make games for a living, make smaller games. You have to make smaller games. There's this big, like, it's almost like a trope where people will set up to make a game just like, I'm going to make my dream game. And it's like, okay, cool. Have you worked on games before? No. Do you have a team? No. It's like me and maybe like my brother, and he's learning how to code or something like that. It's like, dude, you're not going to be able to do your dream game justice. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to spend all of this time working on the game that you wish existed, and it's going to fucking suck, dude, because you don't have the experience. And then when you spend all this time working on this big epic game, it's going to come out. No one's going to buy it because you also have no experience in marketing a game. That you're going to feel terrible. Like 5-6 years down the drain. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. I hate it. I see it all the time. It's painful. And so my advice would be make smaller games. There's gotta be some game ideas that you have that could be condensed down to a small, like bite-sized sort of project. Take for example, there's this game that's in the we'll call it the bullet heaven genre, because I play survivors and stuff. There's a game called 20 Minutes Till Dawn, which ended up doing extremely well. That game was not that developer's goal. That game was just a break. They were taking a break from their dream project to work on that expert. And it took them 2 months from concept to early access to release that game, and it went on to make several $1 million. It did extremely well. Now that kind of success is unusual, to be frank. A lot of games don't make that kind of money. I never have, for example. But it is an example that a smaller game doesn't necessarily mean a bad game. It doesn't necessarily mean a game that won't make you any money or anything like that. Because again, if you're trying to do this for a living, you probably want to start getting income, right? I mean, so pushing out smaller games is the way to do it. Doing it so you can do like 2, maybe even 3 games a year is the best spot to be in. Because if one game does poorly, you can pick yourself up, dust yourself off a lot faster, because you didn't spend years making it, you spent months. And that's important. And then when one of these games kicks off and you start making a name for yourself, maybe then start working on your dream project. Oh, also, and one more thing, publishers. Yeah, I am going to say that very bluntly. I'm sorry. I am going to say that. Do not go with the publisher. Don't do it. Don't do it. They're not going to help you. They're not. And this is a very controversial opinion, but the advice I would give to any dev who doesn't believe me, look up the publisher on Steam. If you type in the publisher's name, where you would usually type in like game names and stuff, you'll see a button to click to see like the developer or publisher or whatever you just typed in. Click on that. Look at all of the games that publisher has released. I guarantee you, almost every single time, most of the games they released flopped. Why would you be any different?
So no publishers, and don't develop a science-based 100% Dragon MMO for 2 years as the first game.
Right, scientifically, I remember that, yeah. Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid, and don't do publishers, please, for the love of God. Emailing content creators will take you way far. That's all I ever do, even now. I just email content creators and kind of YOLO it. And it works. It does. It works out.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing those words of wisdom there. And what are you working on next? What can we look forward to next from you?
Well, as I said, one of the first games I wanted to make was an idle game. And that is, it's largely because, of course, making idle games is arguably pretty easy. But also, I really like the idle game genre. I'm a sucker for these games. I don't know why. I kind of just am. And so, like, I have grown to like making my own idle games. Nomad Idle, of course, being the first idle game I've released. I enjoy doing it. The community was a big part of it. The community is very supportive. Because they're just itching for like the next idle game like I am. So, they're trying to be as encouraging as possible, because they love it when someone's working on a game and they actually release it. Oh, thank God, another idle game. It's been too long. And so that's kind of how it feels sometimes. And so I really enjoyed it. And I think there's a lot you can actually do with this genre. So that's what I'll be doing moving forward. I want to make more idle games. And so that's what I'm working on next. It's another idle game.
All right. And is there anything you want to share about it, or is it top secret, hush hush for now?
It's not secret. I actually have a Steam page up for it already. It's just a little unfinished, but I wanted to get it out there. It's a game called Kin and Quarry. Kin as in K-I-N. And I guess, like, to make a long story short, it's a mining game, but it's time-based. So, like, you have to mine as deep as you can in a span of, like, 60 seconds, that sort of thing. And to reach your goal, you manage your units, you get upgrades, stuff like that, etc., etc. It's a fun little project I worked on, yeah. I actually hope to have it out in the next few months. That'd be nice.
All right. Awesome. Look forward to that. I'll be sure to post a link to that as well, since said you have a Steam page in the description. All right. And I guess that about wraps it up. That's pretty much all of my questions. Thank you for your time, Alex. Anything in particular you'd like to plug before you go?
Yeah, you should check out a game called Gnomes. You know, the Gnomes. You should check it out because it's not an idle game. It's like a little like almost like sort of like base builder tower defense sort of game. It's kind of hard to explain, but a good friend of mine made it, and it's honestly really fun. And if you go to the page for that game, it's sitting at overwhelmingly positive. So I'm not the only person that thinks it's fun. I think that game is definitely worth checking out. It's very good.
All right, Gnomes. I will put a link to that as well in the description. Thank you again, and you have a great one, Alex.
You as well. Thank you.